Hi, everyone. This is Craig Zelizer here with Monica Perez, here for the launch of Season 10. Woohoo! Can't believe we made it through 9 seasons, our first episode of 2023. We're delighted to have you here. I will read Monica's background, and then we'll do a quick summary of how this all works, and then we'll just jump right in. So Monica Perez has more than 2 decades experience at the director level, leading governmental, foundation, nonprofit, and private sector organizations. That's why this is called Advancing a Cross-Sectoral Impact Career. In Latin America and the US, she has led and managed teams of 300 plus, led execution of transformational programs over 10 million US dollars, and led communication and market strategies for leading organizations, including the EPM Group, EPM Foundation, ProColombia, and the International Center and Investment Agency for Medellin. She currently works in New York City, one of the best cities in the world, apart from Medellin, as Associate Director of Development for New York and Latin America for the Nature Conservancy. So for people who have not joined us before, we live stream the podcast. I will start off by asking questions, but while we're getting started and throughout any time, please let us know where you're watching from, whether you're in Colombia or the US or Norway. And then, if you have questions, particularly after the first 10 or 15 minutes, we love to bring those questions in. So please put questions and comments into the chat, and we'll try to bring them and integrate them into the discussion. So for now, right before we get started, and we do have over 100 episodes with brilliant changemakers from all over the world. And we deeply appreciate if people might consider doing a rating of the podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever your thing is. And the good news for this season, we're also trying to go weekly. So we already have, I think, about 10 guests lined up from all corners in the world. So just follow us on LinkedIn or get on our mailing list. And Monica, it is wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for making time to join us. Welcome. I'm going to see a few people are coming. Welcome, Danjuma from Nigeria. Feel free to put a few sentences about your background, and other people, as we're getting started, let us know where you're coming from. So Monica, thank you so much. In full transparency, we actually met in Medellin, and we've also seen each other in New York. And actually, I think this is the first time. Monica is a brilliant professional. Her partner, Ken, has also been on our podcast, Ken Frankel, so you can look it up, I think, from 3 seasons ago. So if you're interested in kind of policy making in Latin America, you can check that out. So I think you're the first married couple we've had on the podcast. Congrats.
Thanks.
Welcome, Marcella. And so to start off with, Monica, can you share, you've had a really interesting high-impact career. Welcome, Justin from DevX, great place for careers. Can you share a little bit about what has been the focus of the type of change you've been seeking to impact in your career?
Okay. Hi, Craig, and hi, everybody, all the people who are listening. Well, first of all, Craig, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me here, and congratulations for all the work you do at PCDN and for creating this wonderful community. So, you're asking me about the why, what has been my driver, or I would say that, well, since we know each other, yesterday I was walking Juanes. We have Ken and I have a dog. He's a rescue dog, a lot of Irish Terrier in him, and his name is Juanes, like the famous singer from Medellin. We got him during the pandemic. So this story is to tell you that I was walking from the park and I saw this person wearing a hat that said, "Do good." And since I was preparing the podcast and reading your questions, I think that has been my major driver. And I'm going to expand a little bit, but I've always tried to do good in what I've done. And this translates into, I've always looked for roles or jobs or places where I can do things that have a common thread, and it's that they're mission driven and they have impact. So I would say that has been my why. The deep layer has been do good, and it has translated into different things that I think we're going to talk about in this podcast.
Did you purchase a Do Good hat or T-shirt, or do you know?
I should. I had this hat that said "Do Good," and I was like, Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's I guess the people that go into the social impact professions is they want to do good. They want a better world. They want a better community, and I think that's what connects us all.
okay. And Juanes is a beautiful rescue dog. And in full transparency, Catalina and I also got a rescue cat during the pandemic. So beautiful cat. So I think a lot of people got rescue pets during the pandemic.
I know, I know.
So going back, I don't want to go over your childhood, but if you think back to a younger age, one of the things experts say now, it's much better not to ask kids what they want to be when they grow up, but what are some challenges or things they might want to work on. But I think back in our generation, when you were at a younger age, did you see yourself, you'd say you want to be a doctor, an astronaut, a politician, or like how in the world did you go from, what you were studying to, finding an impact career? So what were the steps, and what did you dream about as a younger person?
Okay, so I grew up in Medellin, a part of like most of my life, and I come from an entrepreneurial family. So my father was in the clothing industry, and my mother, she stopped working when the kids were a family of five kids growing up. But then she had her own entrepreneurial businesses. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial world, and we learned to work since we were kids. Like my parents would take us. My dad was in the clothing industry, as I said, and as a kid, my dad would take us to the factory, and we would put stickers when they were doing like the belts, or sometimes when there was not. When there was a lot of work during high season, he would bring work home. So I learned to work since I was a kid, and I tell my dad that UNICEF, wasn't so strong at that time, but it was child labor. So we tease him a lot about that. And so coming back to your question, my dream was to be a fashion designer when I was a kid. So this doesn't match a lot with what I've done, and but it does with two things, which is my dad was in the clothing industry. I grew up in that environment, and I got obsessed with two cities, which were New York and Paris. And since I was a kid, I said I want to learn French. I learned English being a kid because we lived in Florida for 3 years when I was in Miami. So there I learned English as a kid. And like during the growing up period, I wanted to study fashion design, but parents, they come and they tell you, well, maybe not fashion. Maybe why don't you study business? We have a family business, and you should go into the family business, and then study your fashion design, or study your French, etc., etc. So I postponed those things a lot, and life brought me then to the social world, which is, and one of the things that I would like to share with people is, sometimes, like when you're going into the social world, or even when if you're earliest stages of your career, sometimes you don't know what you want. Like my father was in the clothing industry, so aesthetics was very important for me, and aesthetics has been part of my life. And I used to think that I wanted to be a fashion designer. I ended up studying business, but aesthetics has always been part of my life. Art has always been part of my life. And I ended up working in a French company. That was my first degree, like a job. And then like from there, I learned something, which was I was in an administrative and finance role. And there I learned that I didn't like routine so much. Like for 3 years, like my career path was going to be in finance, and there was an opportunity to work for the state of Antioquia. So the job opportunity didn't come in the shape that I wanted it, because it was to be the head of the Miss Antioquia pageant. So when you think about that, it's like, oh, really? Like, is that a way to start?
I want to interrupt a little bit here. So you could have been the head of the Miss Antioquia pageant, like the
I
director?
was. In fact, I was.
I
That
never
was
knew
my
that.
entry point into the public sector.
Okay.
So I was looking for a change in my career. I had been working like for 3 years in finance and administration in a job that I enjoyed a lot, which was a landing process or an investment from a French multinational in Colombia. But after 3 years and like opening the operations, my job became a very routine. It was a routine. Like I knew on Monday what was going to happen on Tuesday, and I knew what was going to happen on Friday. So, and the stakeholders that I would work with was the business, like banking, and the internal community. So there, I thought I want to explore more things. So there was an opportunity in marketing. The first lady of the state of Antioquia was democratizing the beauty pageant. So she wanted to do a whole contest in the state of Antioquia. And so a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, was working at the state of Antioquia, and she told me, look, the first lady is looking for somebody at first. And was like, really? No. I'm not, no. And then it's like, okay, let's consider what is her challenge? What does she want? And there is another advice, because here the title of the podcast is tips, is don't always say no. Just be open to possibilities, because they always don't come in the shape that you want them, because you have access to information and you think you want to do something this way, and sometimes it comes in different shapes. So my entry point to the public sector was through being the head of the Miss Antioquia pageant, and it was a wonderful experience, because at the end of the day, she wanted to create a reality show about the pageant. So it was before that pageant was only in the city of Medellin, and then she brought it to the whole state. So that was my entry point. And then I became the head of another NGO that she had as first lady, which was for childhood. And I started learning there. So there it was my entry point and career into the social programs. And then I went into poverty reduction. Then I became head of La ASI, which is the Internet Investment and Cooperation Agency. Then through that position, I got to New York to be the head of a foreign direct investment in the city of New York. And then I moved to Medellin to work for EPM and so forth.
Wonderful. I think you're the first person there. Obviously, there's a lot going on. Fast fashion is destroying the world, but there is a big movement around fashion and sustainability. But I think you're the first person. And for people who don't know Colombia or Medellin, fashion. Chinese imports have hurt it, but there's still a very strong textile industry in Medellin, and also just fashion, and also just kind of. I think it's changing, but beauty queen. I don't know if there's I don't know if there's a Mr. Beauty King, but I know that it's still a big deal in this part of the world. So one question, if you think about it, how did you best upskill for your jobs, and how much was done through academic training? How much was learning on the job? And when you think about, are there certain skills that you found consistently valuable across your roles? So is it finance, communication, public speaking? So what's the best way for you to develop these skills, and how do you encourage others to do that?
Okay, so my background is business. I went to a business school, so most of my skills have been in business, and this has been very useful as well, because I started working in like 20 years ago. So at that time, the mindset for the NGO world was not so business driven. So like the principles of business weren't so applied. So it's been really useful, my degree, the business degree, and I apply it to everything. And part of what I try to apply is also systems thinking in all the sectors that I've worked for. So part of it has also a learning on the job, and that makes me very happy, because I've had the opportunity to learn on the different positions, and I try to immerse myself in the different jobs, even in the Miss Antioquia pageant. Like, how does this work? Like, which are the dots? Who are the key stakeholders? How does it like the whole ecosystem? So it's been a combination of both, like studying and getting degrees. I went to business school, then I got a degree in political studies, and I got another degree. It's called creative intervention. It's from a design school in the city of Medellin. So there, I made it up for my design degree. And I think it should be a combination of both. And as professionals, I believe that we have to work both hard skills, what they call the hard skills, like of course the business and the languages for me have been very useful, but soft skills are key as well. And I think for the ones who are listening and our parents are out there, I think the soft skills is the ones we learn at home. So at home, I learned problem solving. At home, I learned teamwork because I come from a big family. Problem solving was like when we were kids, one day my parents said, okay, the kids are going to make breakfast today. So that was like what you call in the entrepreneurial world today, a challenge, because, like, okay, how do we prepare breakfast for the family? And it was my brothers and I like doing the thing. So yeah, so both. And just like the basics of being humans, like listening, communicating, being aware, have been really helpful for me. And curiosity.
It's a wonderful list. So I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and I see questions are starting to come in, then I'll bring those in. So please, for anyone just joining, let us know where you're watching from, or feel free to add your question. So one question, I assume you did your degree at EAFIT. So can you just talk about how in the world, because I assume by that point, how many years professional experience did you have? And we have a lot of mid-career people. So how did you decide to go back to formal schooling, not just on-the-job learning or short-term training? And what in the world? So EAFIT is very famous for innovation, but you created your own major, or was within one of their own programs? And what's like the most valuable experience you got out of that?
Okay, so yeah, it's that in Colombia, fortunately, we don't have liberal arts school education. I wish we did. So I went into a formal degree of 5 years of education plus 2 internships. So that was really great, because my first internship I did it at the Colombian American Chamber of Commerce, and my second internship I did it in an association in the clothing industry. So and both were positions where I got to learn a lot, because it was small organizations. So small organizations, you have to do multitasker, and you have to develop a different school. So for me, it has been the formal education. So that's why I went to EAFIT, and then I went to get another degree, because learning has been an important part of my career, like learning in the formal environments, but also learning in the informal environments. Like when I start working in a new position, for example, now I'm working at the Nature Conservancy, and the topic is conservation, climate change, biodiversity. So now I'm into learning about that, because in the jobs you get for like the education and the trainings, but you have to study on your own.
And then my last question for now, and then we'll bring them in, is, I've been my wife Catalina is from Bogota. I've been living in Medellin for 5 years. And can you talk a little bit about, you've worked a lot on public policy and infrastructure and public-private partnerships and attracting foreign investment. So I don't want to go over the history of Medellin, but what has it been like to represent a city that has gone from, let's say, a very negative reputation around the world to kind of promoting really positive engagement? And any lessons from that? Like, because a lot of people might be watching from society, and Colombia still has huge challenges, and Medellin still insanely unequal, and there's corruption and violence and pollution. But just like some of your reflections from being at the cutting edge of that radical transformation, both internally and externally.
Oh yeah, thank you, Craig, for the question. So yeah, you gave the framework. The frame. Medellin is located in Colombia, and Colombia is one of the most unequal countries in the world. So part of what Medellin, which was in the late 80s, 90s, one of the most violent cities in the world, had to rethink itself and say, okay, there's if there was a ground for all the drug drug business to evolve, there must be some things that we're not doing right. So part of in the 90s, the country created a position in the city of Medellin, and this person called Maria Emma Mejia went to see the city and understand what was happening, especially with youth. And there were no social programs for youth. There's movies and books written about no future, like young kids in Medellin saw no future, and the future that they saw was the possibilities that the drug lords were giving them. So for me, part of the innovation and it has different names, like they call architecture innovation, a social innovation. What the city did was listen to its people, listen to the young people that at that time, and start creating programs for them. So, and giving them a sense of future and a sense of community. And they wanted to be seen. So created programs on television for them to be seen. So it goes from educational programs to economic development and creating infrastructure for people, because the reality is in Brazil, they're called favelas. In Medellin, they're called comunas. It's like the poor neighborhoods, they were totally abandoned by the state. So there were several terms of mayors that starting the investing in the poor and investing with aesthetics and creating like this beautiful libraries, beautiful schools, wonderful health centers for the people. And I was very lucky to be the head of international relations for the city of Medellin and promote international cooperation for development for the economic for the development plan for the city. And yes, and so that's that. And then at EPM, there was another innovation called Las Uvas, which were the water tanks in the city. Had this land that the community used during different time periods of the year, especially during Christmas. They would ask permission at the EPM if they could use the land, and there was a CEO that came into EPM and said, why can't we lend them why can't we do something with that land? Oh no, it's not allowed, it's not permitted, blah blah blah. So to make the story short, he was coming from Canada, from living in and seeing like this wonderful community centers, and the architect from EPM went to see them, and they came back and said, yeah, maybe we could use this land, and let's talk to the community. What does the community need? Oh, they want community space, they want learning centers, they want this and that. And just by an exercise of co-creation and of course an investment and some will from the board, the city created 12 wonderful spaces that have won international prizes, like the Lee Kuan Yew, like the whole thing, and participated in La Biennale de Venecia in 2016 as urban innovation. So the city has won its prize for innovation, but it has been innovative in not only nowadays in tech and software, et cetera, but yeah, it's social and architectural innovation.
So I'm just going to make 3 comments, and then we have lots of questions coming in.
Yeah.
So just to say, like, Medellin still has insane challenges. So
totally.
And it's the best city. I've lived in many places and traveled. They have the best marketing in Medellin out of any city I've seen in the world. So some of it's hype, but a lot of it, But to say like a couple of things that I think Medellin's done very well, and I'm not an urban designer, but as Monica said, it's not just doing centers; it's building infrastructure. So both school, soccer courts, the metro, they have, I think, 6 cable car systems that are not built for the richer neighborhoods. They go up into the comunas, and they actually have radically reduced transport time and increased quality of life. So there's
Oh,
still
yeah.
there's still lots of violence and gangs and all these things, but I
Mhm.
think Medellin is one of the most innovative cities in the global south. And there's also, some people would call it, let's say, nepotism. There's a couple of very powerful private corporations, but they do a lot of interesting public-private partnerships around civic engagement in museums and education and sports. So there's a really strong commitment between public and private sector. And my last comment, I would encourage people to look up Ruta N, which is quite interesting. It's a public-private partnership, all focused on, it's been around, I think, 12 years, on innovation and bringing together the actors in the city, from universities to youth to educators to entrepreneurs, to work on global challenge, both regional and global challenges. So it's pretty, and it's a beautiful building. So anyway, I want to get to lots of questions.
And Craig, let me interrupt you there. Part of what we did, like part of the work that we did at LAASI, which is the Investment and Cooperation Agency, with Ruta N, was attracting the Global Service Center for Hewlett-Packard. And what you're saying there about the public-private partnerships, a part of the negotiation process was with the country, Colombia and Bogota. Medellin and Bogota were competing with other Latin American cities to host to be the investment city for Hewlett-Packard when they were thinking for a global service center in Latin America. And part of what impressed the team from Hewlett-Packard was that what you're saying is that private-public partnership and even academic. And when we built the case, what was that? It was universities, it was the public sector, and it was the private sector. And the private sector, at that time, the president of SURA and the provost at EAFIT and the CEO of EPM, like all private-public partnerships, got together and they said, we want that investment to stay in the city of Medellin. What do you need? And with that, we built like a really, really solid case. So yes, it's part of the Medellin spirit. I know what you're talking about marketing. Like people say that it's the mountains that make it, the people from Medellin like think that they're the best in the world, and that has its a good side and not so great side, but there is a will to do things.
Yes, and then I mean, before I get to questions, also Medellin's one of two cities in the global south that host the World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So they continue, and then another also doing a lot on tech and kind of calling it the Valley of the Software, trying to build like a Silicon Valley of Medellin. So lots of exciting things. So Joshua, who is based in Houston, who works for Fuse Corps, and the mayor of Houston's office. So if anyone doesn't know Fuse Corps, it's a great US-based fellowship that puts people with strong private sector experience, embeds them in city government for a year or two to work in discrete innovation projects. So please check it out. So Joshua is asking, do you think the skills in your work in finance prepared you for your roles in the public sector, and which specific skills?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Joshua. Thanks for your question. Yes, of course. And especially because when I got my degree, the two emphasis were finance and marketing. So yes, and like when you ask for the public sector, of course, they did prepare me like from basic finance to the rest. But overall, it's finance, but it's also like, how do you apply them? So nowadays in the social impact world, like the key indicators, people want to see figures and they want to see how you impact with your work. So it's first the numbers and the figures, but then it's how you tell the story, because a number for a number, it doesn't mean anything. So you need to use your mathematical skills, but you have to translate that into a narrative that is understandable for people and even for investors when you're doing like a fundraising role.
Okay, thank you so much. So next question is from Justin, who works for DevX, and I assume most people know about DevX, but if not, it's a incredible platform and community around development, and they do a lot on careers, but also a lot of original reporting on the development world. So what's one piece of advice you would offer to anyone who's unsure if their existing experience would translate well into a role in the social impact space?
Okay, Justin, I don't, so what is one of the pieces that you would,
So like someone, that's it, like someone who has mid-career experience and they've been doing like tech or finance or anything, and they don't want to do more of widgets. They want to, so what's it, like, how do people think about translating their skills or finding the right steps to move to something impact first or impact equal?
Yeah, well, the first piece of advice that I would tell Justin, and thank you for your question, is where do you see yourself? And when I was preparing the podcast, one of the questions that you asked was, how do you describe your career path, and do you plan, or is it serendipity? And I was going to say, if that question came up, was planning, like the planning of the soul. So my piece of advice, Justin, would be like, where do you see yourself? Like, and like in which environment? Do you like to be like in the administrative roles? I've been mostly in administrative roles. Some people like to be in the field. I like a combination of both. I've been executive director of different NGOs or organizations. So first is I would think of myself as, where do I want to see myself, and which are the things that are most important for me, and then I would take my skill set and translate it into what that role or where I see myself. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question properly, but if you're in tech and you're working, everybody needs things in tech. So it's more like I would look at the big picture, like which a industry, or if you want to say of the social impact, do you see yourself in health? Do you see yourself in poverty reduction? Do you see yourself in entrepreneurship? And from there, I would start narrowing it down.
Thank you so much. And Justin, feel free to add comments. I know this is more for,
yes.
DevX is doing a lot of good work, so also it's for their community. So the next question and please keep the questions coming. We're getting them from all over, so thank you, everyone. From Rodrigo, let us know where you're based. What is the importance of change makers in our societies and IR these days? So I guess, it's a pretty broad question, but you can feel to contextualize it how you'd like.
Rodrigo, so the importance of change makers in international relations, for sure. My experience has been in international relations, and I believe we're change makers, like from the positions that we're at, and also like when we are, for example, today I'm working in New York. I'm working in a global NGO. So part of our role as change makers is also like this role that we play in diversity. The Nature Conservancy has done a big effort bringing different cultures into the organization. So part of my role as well, besides the fundraising position and the climate change, et cetera, is I'm a Colombian working in New York City. So it's creating that awareness into that. And for me, like the position that had to do the most with international relations and Changemaker was at the ASI, which was exposing the city of Medellin to different environments and different people, bringing people into the city and their willingness to invest and in both vehicles, international cooperation for development and foreign direct investment. So yes, it's key. And and I would, sorry, Craig, okay. And I would encourage like one of the things that has been really useful for my career has been curiosity and international relations. Curiosity is always there. Like you don't, you need to be curious to know why things work the way they work. And it's not only the cultural awareness, but also like, why do people talk like they talk? Why do they behave like they behave? And to be aware of all those subtleties helps a lot, besides like learning the language.
So a follow-up question, we get this a lot, both in our career coaching and a lot of friends. So lots of people get to a senior role at the city or national level, whether it's public policy, health, gender, economic development, and they want to move to a regional role or a global role, whether it's remote or based somewhere else. And it's often very hard to move outside of one, even if you have incredible skills and impact in your country or city, to move outside. So do you have any advice when someone comes and says, Monica, you've flown, like your career's been fluid, you've moved between different sectors, but also geographic regions. So when someone comes to you and said, I've got 15 years experience and all the qualifications in management and budget, and I want to move to work on regional or global challenges, what's your advice for that person?
Well, part of that, for me, it has happened a little bit serendipitously, but at the same time, it's been hard work. Like the position when I came to work in New York City, the first time was after that Hewlett-Packard investment. ProColombia called me, and because there was this a position here, so. Part of my recommendation is always do the job that you're performing with excellence, because you don't know who's watching, and you don't know where you're sitting, that somebody's looking, and there can be a job offer as it is. Second, I would recommend, like nowadays, LinkedIn is a wonderful platform. So always have your LinkedIn updated. And also just start looking like where you want to be, like I was saying before. If your dream is to work, I don't know, in a global NGO, and you're located today in a city of Latin America or a city in Africa, is start seeing how that NGO operates, and start looking for positions that are available. Nowadays, there's a lot of those software trackers that do the first phase of the research. So what I would recommend to people is look at the position and look at your resume. And many of the words, because since we know that this is computers or robots doing it, a software, try to match, because if not, you're never going to get through that process. And also is and I reiterate this, keep your LinkedIn profile updated. The position I have with the Nature Conservancy today was, I was headhunted by LinkedIn. Somebody wrote to me, there's this position offer, and do you want to apply? So it does work. It's a little bit of serendipitous, but at the same time, it's doing like the right things at the right moment that also help, and networking. Networking is key. I didn't know anybody at the Nature Conservancy. I did when I was working here in New York at the time, and so I knew the organization ahead of time. But when this job search came, I wasn't connected to the organization. So, but after I got the proposal to participate in the process, I started networking and learning about the organization. And every time I went to an interview, I would study really well who was going to interview me, because at the end of the day, it's the human connection. You need the skills, but you need the human connection, and you work with people. So you always want to see and to end, it's a process. It's like they're interviewing you and you're interviewing for the position, but you're also interviewing, and you are also asking yourself if you see yourself there. So it's the double role.
Thank you so much. Amazing advice. 3 quick comments, then we have lots more questions coming in. We have about 10, 15 minutes left if anybody wants to get your question. So just one, I've been hired off of LinkedIn too. I've gotten to teach in Paris twice. Obviously people knew, but it's like, LinkedIn, if you do transactional networking, you're just gonna get frustrated. If you do curiosity and say, these are interesting people, and you're just to connect and share and help. But if you say I need to get a job, it's the totally wrong way to use LinkedIn. Yesterday, a friend wrote to me at an international NGO. He's like, I'm looking for people who know X. And I had like a list of, and he didn't want like to be publicized. I had a list of like 6 people. And one of my friends who I know would be perfect had no LinkedIn profile. And it's like, and these days, if you don't make it easy for someone to share, like I didn't share that person's information, it was too much work. So
it's
like
too much work.
So you need to have a robust and up-to-date, I mean, it could be 6 months old, but if you're not updated resume and LinkedIn, when those things happen, they happen all the time, you're going to be missing out.
You are. And Craig, like my LinkedIn is 10 years old. And I remember when I was, well, maybe, 10, 11 years old. When I was working in Medellin, it was just starting when I was working at La ASI, and I would get these invitations, but I didn't even know what it was. So I was like, okay, I was too busy, delete. Then when I came to work in New York, I had my first 2-3 meetings, and people were asking me like, where I didn't see you on LinkedIn, and I was like, what? So a friend, a colleague that became a friend told me, no, you need to open one like right now. And there I started. So since this is a podcast about tips, every time I meet somebody, I go, after I meet them, like I have a business meeting, I go and add them on LinkedIn, because you never know, that's one a way of keeping like the people on your network, but at the same time is you get their info and what they're up to permanently. So I think LinkedIn is a really useful tool. I'm not very good at Instagram, or I used to have Facebook many years ago, and but I'm not very active, but I am active on LinkedIn. I find it super useful.
Yeah, and LinkedIn used to be so boring, and it still is, but it's like but it's like if you connect with people, you'll find so much opportunity in learning. But let's move on.
You do. And the other thing I wanted to say, what you were mentioning, Craig, is you are the master of networking, and for people, one advice that I would give is also that, like I love networking as well, and connecting people, because there's always somebody that needs something, and you can connect them, and then that comes back to you. I know it sounds very esoterical and like given, but at the same time, it's how it works. There's always a moment when people are going to need somebody. It doesn't matter if it's the CEO of a company. It doesn't matter if it's mid-level or it's everybody is always like looking for something, and if you can help them, then it's going to come back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So the next question is from Onyene from Nigeria. Welcome. So I'm a graduate of banking and finance. However, business, it's my thing. What kind of advice would you give her, in terms of what, and Onyene, if you want to add a little bit, are you thinking about starting your own business or working for a multinational or startup? But any advice, Monica, when someone's completed the degree and they want to figure out where to go?
Well, Onyini, thank you for your question. And I see lots of opportunities in microfinance, like fintech world. If you like that, it's a great combination with social inclusion, and it's wonderful. Like what you see, I've had one of my positions was also in an NGO that promoted small businesses to grow, and we would connect them. It was connecting them to big channels. And one of the biggest needs for entrepreneurs was microfinance. And I see that growing a lot in Latin America. It's growing a lot in Africa. So it's a field that I haven't worked a lot on, but I just love it. You see how it changes people's lives, and you see the social mobility. So that would be if you like banking and finance and you want to go into the social impact world, I would start looking microfinance. Like there's a lot of NGOs right now that working on that.
Thanks so much. And also PCDN, you can look at our meta job list. So we have a best meta list of impact job sites around the world. So for business, you can look at the B Works, which has all the B Corporation jobs around the world. Aspen and like it's also finding what aspect of business you want to focus on. And for microfinance, there's a really good job board. I'm going blank on the name, but like you'll find job boards or communities or LinkedIn groups or Slack channels for all these things.
And also another, I would compliment another opportunity that's growing is climate finance. So if you're interested in climate, which is one of the topics that's growing the most in jobs, et cetera, climate finance, there's a lot, it's growing, and it's in equity, in debt, in ways of structuring different vehicles for climate. So there's a other opportunity which is really, really interesting. So if you like more people, go into microfinance, but if you're more interested in climate change, I would start exploring climate finance. Where I work at the Nature Conservancy, there's an in-house investment area that's called Nature Vest. If you want, check it out. It's really, really cool what they do.
Yeah, very cool. And just 2 comments there. So Kathleen and I do small scale angel investing in social impact startups. So some of the places we've invested in, Enduring Planet, where I'm also a scout for. If you're a little pitch, because they're amazing, but if you're a US-based climate tech startup, they do revenue-based financing, not equity. And then very involved in another one called Carbon Collective, and like the climate, we just passed the first $1 trillion invested in climate. Bloomberg just came out that report last week, and there is no magic solution to getting to net zero or less than 1.5 centigrade increase, but putting the right capital into both public, private, and nonprofit solutions, like we're so far behind, and so like there's the growth in that area is exponential. And I'll put in the chat, Climate Base is great for climate jobs, and TerraDo, another startup we invested in. And then Climate Asia, they have, and then Climate EU, I'll put them in. So those are 4 great places to find sustainability jobs in general. And then they often have a lot on climate tech, all that stuff. So next question comes from Juan David. I think you're based in Colombia, I'm not sure.
I worked with Juan David.
Okay, so do you want to read the question since you know each other?
Okay, Juan David Giraldo, how can we promote social innovation in our organizations? Today, there is a lot of innovation technology, many devices, but not much social impact. Okay, Juan David works at EPM. So Juan David, I don't know what to tell you, because EPM is a social innovator per se. I would say, like, I don't know, how do we promote social innovation in our organizations? It's I don't know what to respond, like, since one day works at EPM, but like in general, I would say you have to, like, if I were, I'm going to act like I don't know Juan David because it's easier for me. It's in any organization, if you want to look for social impact, the first thing is, like, what is the main role of the organization, and from there I would define, like, the social impact. So if you're in the retail world, like, what are you impacting? Like, we just talked about the textile industry, so or clothing industry, where Medellin is really strong. So you start thinking about the communities you impact, and where do you get your services from, or your suppliers. I would start thinking and looking at the core of the business, and from there I would take it to start developing the social impact programs. And that's what EPM did, like with the library, with the museum, with the UVAs.
So just thank you so much.
Thanks, Juan David, for your question.
So again, from Josh, I think we talked about this some, but what are some of the barriers about leading social impact programs in Medellin, and how did you overcome them? And I'm trying to infer to a broader question. So when you encounter challenges, because there's always bureaucratic people, budgetary challenges, when you know fairly confidently that the thing that you're working on as a team is the right thing to do or could have big change, how do you deal with, I mean, I've encountered this so many times, how do you just deal with internal bureaucratic resistance, but also opposition?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I guess it's a lot of perseverance. First, second is resilience, and I guess it's that, and a lot of negotiation. So perseverance is you have like a task or an activity or a strategy or a purpose to get accomplished. So there, this is where you're standing, and there's always going to be challenges and barriers. It's part of work. It's part of, and it's part of life. So part of like my key um, advice, or what I try to do is just take one day at a time, and we are working with people. So also is understanding other people's needs, and this word that they use a lot nowadays of co-creation. It's yes, we are in relationship with somebody. So to overcome like all the bureaucratical barriers, political barriers, it's people. So it's what does the other person want, and what do I need. So it's closing those differences in order to get to a common goal. And it's a lot of negotiation. Like you have to negotiate a lot, and you have to be a, and it's not like hardcore negotiation. It's understanding other people's needs, and just selling what you need as well to find that common ground.
About 5 minutes left, so thank you so much. I do feel like as you're talking, I wonder if you have a book in you, not that you want to do a book, but both on the helping be involved intimately in the significant transformation of Medellin. There's a lot to be said there, but also just leadership and dealing with large bureaucracies. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. And one thing that has been useful for me is that I've had like really important roles, and I've always like that thing of do good has been a part of my career. But I've always had I've also have had like a playful mindset. Like I haven't taken it so serious, even though it's serious, and I'm very serious and I'm very methodical when I work. But at the same time, there's a layer in me that has never believed that it's very important, but I haven't believed that the role that I'm portraying is like that serious or important. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. Like, okay, how do we work this way? Because if you think that you are, I don't know, negotiating or selling an idea to a big corporate CEO or a big mayor, or I don't know, all the people that we received in Medellin or that I have worked with, presidents of countries, you can get a little bit like, maybe not, maybe what is this person gonna say? So I just think like we're humans, like this person has a need and I have a need, and let's look for this common ground.
Thank you. So Marcela, the organization I think you're referring to is Fuse Corps. You can take a look, but there's lots of those. Pro Fellows are a very good resource. You're getting lots of thank yous from people. Let's see. I think I'll ask one more question, then we'll wrap up because we're almost at a full hour. Actually, two questions. So one is, how have you managed to work on such large-scale social challenges? Actually, so 3 questions. Very quick question. For people
the pizza question. I want the pizza question.
Okay, we'll give it at the end. But three quick questions. So one is for people who are thinking about nonprofit, or INGO versus government versus private sector, like any thoughts in terms of, I mean, obviously each country and organization is different, but how someone decides, let's say they're passionate about sustainability, how do they decide which sector to go into? Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Or just like, it's good to try it all?
Well, I would say it's like where your heart beats. There's sectors that where people are more passionate about. Like, for example, since I come from an entrepreneurial family, entrepreneurship has been one of the fields that I've been more interested in. Like economic development, because I come from a business background, and also because of the entrepreneurship. So I would say it's just like take a time to think of yourself and connect with your internal soul and what you like, because for me, all the fields are interesting. Like there's so much to learn that any field that you choose to. Nowadays, I'm learning so much on climate change and biodiversity and how a global NGO works. But before, I think that if I had decided I'm going to work at the Nature Conservancy, I wouldn't be working here today because I would have missed out on other opportunities. So it's just like, try to think how you want to feel, what sectors do you like resonate with you, and start looking there, because in the NGO world, there's so many wonderful NGOs. Like I could think of myself working in many of them.
Okay. So one PCDN pitch and then two final questions. I'll just say this looks very long here. It's short on LinkedIn, but we're doing a new impact career course on Maven, a great startup. So if you are open, even if you don't want to take the course, 30 seconds just helps us to build a great course. And if you want to take the course, you get a discount. So please look at that. So a huge question, you're working on climate and, so how do you stay resilient? And, just personally, I mean, Nature Conservancy is one of the leading INGOs working on this. There's lots of other good ones, like how do you, I don't want to say optimistic, but the world is messed up and we're doing a horrible job. So do you think, and we can't tech and innovate our way out of it. So do you feel like we're going to hit a tipping point where we actually do what we need to do, or it's going to be super bumpy and horrible and eventually maybe we'll do, I mean, it's kind of like a half glass, half full, but just like, how do you stay resilient? And then just, where do you see this all going?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's, I want to remain optimistic, and that's why I work at the Nature Conservancy. But also, so part of my work has to do with climate and contributing, like doing the fundraising for global programs. But at the same time, I think this is also what we do on our daily basis. So I compost. I try to do like be very consumer aware. Here I use the subway in Medellin. I have a card that we rarely use. So I try to do what's in me to contribute to have a better planet for me, for my family, and for everybody. But yeah, it's a good question, because it's when you read so much and you look at the news and you see that we're not getting there, it's hard to remain optimistic. But at the Nature Conservancy, what I like is that we are optimistic, and that we think that this decade is a key decade to make that a change.
Okay, and then last question, what are you currently learning or not learning, like just having fun watching a show, or like, you're developing new skills, or is it a Netflix show or a book? Like just what is providing you either mindless entertainment or inspiring kind of thoughts these days?
Well, nowadays I'm reading a book of I like to read. I have like 4 books started, but right now I'm entertaining myself with a book from Nora Ephron. She's an American writer, and she's for the ones that are listening, she's the one that wrote the screenplay for When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, all those 90s romantic comedy shows, and I've been enjoying it a lot because all her articles, it's a compilation of articles that she wrote during the 60s and the 70s. So it talks a lot about the history of the US and what was happening at that time and what was happening in New York City. So I'm entertaining myself with that. What else? I like to listen to podcasts. I'm listening to a podcast that's called Finding Mastery. Which is really cool. They interview people and how they have found their mastery in different fields, sports, entrepreneurship, etc. And on Netflix, we switch. Since Ken, we move from documentaries and music to different series, and yeah.
So thank you so much for taking an hour out of your super busy schedule to share your wisdom and experience, and maybe at some point you can get a sabbatical and write a book or a screenplay.
Thank you. And the pizza question, Craig.
Oh, yeah. Oh, let me just wrap up then with a pizza question. And then thank you everyone for watching from all over the world. Our next session will be next week, I think on the 8th, with Anika Nawabi, who's also based in New York, who heads the Muslim Community Network. So she's wonderful. And then we're going to jump to Canada, working on sustainability, South Sudan. And, so just stay tuned. It all goes up on LinkedIn. This podcast will be up within a week or two. So please check out the 100 other episodes and please rate and share because that helps the most. And then pizza, or we did a whole session yesterday, a workshop on our career campus, and the big debate was pineapple and pizza. And most of the Colombians like it. Most of the non-Colombians were against it. So where do you stand?
It's called Hawaiian pizza. I don't know why Hawaiian, but it's delicious.
Okay, no, because the consensus yesterday, Colombians loved it, and most non-Colombians like pineapple. Yes, so I think I'm a pizza person, but not pineapple and pizza. I think it's an abuse. You should ask New Yorkers. I don't know how it goes in New York.
I'm going to ask this question here in New York because when I listened to another podcast and you were asking pizza with pineapple, I thought that is so Colombian. But I love the answer where they said that pizza with mango.
No, pizza shouldn't be with anything sweet except pizza. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody. Thank